Hello, everyone. Welcome today to our World Narcolepsy Day broadcast. We're so excited to have Orla here joining us. Orla, where are you joining us from? Hello, everyone.
Sunny
Welcome.
Dublin.
Sorry about that. I started getting the noise from YouTube that are so anyway, we're so excited to have you share your story all the way from Ireland. I was joking that I thought we both deserve some Guinness or, something, some sort of Irish treats while we have this broadcast. Ireland's one of my favorite countries to visit and such an amazing narcolepsy community there. So we're just really excited for you to hear Orla's story today. But first, just a few housekeeping. Thank you guys for joining us today on YouTube. We've kind of switched now from Facebook Lives to YouTube Lives, but very similarly, please share the video. Please give us the little hearts or thumbs up or, all that kind of interaction. Orla will have time to take questions at the end, so put your questions into the chat so we can get your questions over to Orla. And please just remember that any comments that you put into the chat on YouTube will stay public with the broadcast. So you wouldn't want to share anything there that you wouldn't want to share publicly. Another really important thing to know is this is recorded, so you can share it afterwards. And Orla will be sharing her personal experience today. But please remember, of course, that if anything about Orla's story brings up questions to you about your own medical situation, to please bring those questions to your sleep specialist or your healthcare team. So we do these broadcasts for education and awareness purposes, but not to necessarily give you medical advice about your situation. It is also, of course, the month of September, such a special month for people with narcolepsy because it's the month of World Narcolepsy Day. And this is our first broadcast leading up to World Narcolepsy Day. We will have another broadcast later this month with Liesl in New Zealand, and we'll be having a very special feature event on World Narcolepsy Day itself to talk about and celebrate an amazing article that's going to be coming out in Scientific American featuring World Narcolepsy Day. And that broadcast will be with Josh Andrews, so that should be really cool. So please tune in for our upcoming events. And of course, check out our virtual photo booth. We have a really wonderful virtual photo booth going right now with sort of like a space theme. We have our little shirts with the space guy. So we're just so grateful for everyone's participation leading up to World Narcolepsy Day on September 22nd. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead, Orla, and pull up your slides and read your bio. So why don't I start by reading your bio? Orla Nolan is an organizational psychologist, mother, and crochet master from Dublin, Ireland. Her narcolepsy symptoms began in her late teens, and she was diagnosed with type 2 narcolepsy without cataplexy at age 36. Now 58 and a speaker with Project Sleep's Rising Voices program, Orla shares the highs and lows of discovering how to manage life with narcolepsy and focus on doing the things, focus on doing the things that she loves. So let me go ahead and pull up your slides. Slideshow. Awesome. And please take it away, Orla.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. And thank you for the invitation. I'm very excited to be able to share my story today. And I'm happy to answer any questions, as Julie said. There's no guessing what year I was born in when you see this photograph, so most definitely a 70s photograph. So this was taken about, I was born in 1965 and the photograph is in 1970s. If you want to know who I am, I'm the little girl there in the brown dress, the beautiful brown dress. So I was born in Dublin in 1965. I was one of six children, so three boys and three girls. Um, my two sisters and two brothers, two older brothers, as you can see, the kind of taller people in the background were the older ones. So I was the fifth of the six children. I was a very shy child, and I wonder now if why it's been easier for me sometimes to ask for support has been that even as a child, I had older brothers and sisters. Being very shy, I'd get them to speak on behalf of me. So I was very protected. I was always terrified of the dark. But really, really creative kid. Spent most of the time doing drawings. And then if I wanted something, I might ask my sisters and brothers to do it. My poor sisters and brothers as well, even as a child, at night time, I was afraid to go out to the bathroom in the dark, and one or other of them would be woken up to bring me out. So that was little me, Orla, in the brown dress, starting off with my mum, Helen, and Dennis. So if we go to the next slide, please, Julie. So where did the symptoms start? So from the child who was afraid of the dark, in my mid to late teens, I started to notice that I was having very bizarre experiences. So the fear of the dark had gone into suddenly now on falling asleep or in waking up, having a horrific kind of sense of foreboding, sometimes feeling like I saw a shadowy figure in the distance. I actually shared a bedroom with my two sisters, and I remember asking them, had they seen anything? And they'd said no. I used to go through a ritual of things like closing all the wardrobe doors, just terrified that something was going to come out. I even had teddy bears and dolls and everything all around me in the bed, in that sense of protection, and had little routines that I did, but again, wrote it off. You can see the picture here just on the top left-hand corner. One of the times I noticed, again, I was used to all the different things and routines I had as a kid. But in my mid to late teens, it started to become really obvious in school. When I was really stressed out, I could feel myself wanting to go to sleep. I would find at various intervals during the day, I'd come up with any opportunity to maybe take a break, go down, go to the bathroom and just chillax for a second. Or at lunch hour, I'd go and I'd hide under my desk and put my coat around me, just that need to be able to close my eyes for a minute or two. I put up this little picture here because this was my first ever school trip. And I had an opportunity, as you can see, we were in Paris, we were all eating our baguettes, absolutely thrilled to do it. But the running joke the whole way through the school trip was noddy Orla, because the whole time during the school trip, I was asleep on my suitcase. I was asleep in the train. I was asleep on the bus. I was asleep on the boat. I was asleep all kinds of different places. So it took me 2 seconds to fall asleep. I was either completely animated or fast asleep. And then in the nighttime, as the rest of my pals were all fast asleep in the bedroom, I was awake half the night and then sleep, wake, sleep, wake. So it was quite obvious to me at that point that I definitely had a different sleep pattern to them. But these kind of nighttime experiences started to become more and more extreme. I put in the second photograph, which is the middle photograph, that's me with my now husband, then boyfriend, and a friend of ours called Smokey. And I had moved to LA. And in LA, I started to, at this stage, I was kind of early 20s. And those nighttime experiences that I had were becoming more extreme. So at this stage, I'm now living with my husband. I would feel, so if I give an example of one night, it was that horrible sinking feeling. So again, just as I went to go to sleep, it was a horrific kind of sinking feeling and a big kind of a buzzing sound in my ear. So very strange kind of sound of bells and noises and buzzing in my ears. And just a feeling, almost the way I could describe it is as if someone was pulling me by the back of my head. So I had no sense of being able to control the feeling. And I'd had these feelings before, but this was a particularly nasty kind of episode of just feeling completely out of control. I remember thinking, I can get myself back into my body because it felt like I was up and flying. So I started to kind of move up from the room. At one stage, I thought I had managed to get myself back into what I thought was get back into my bed. And I'd gone over to switch on the light, put my hand and realized I was still asleep. So I wasn't actually awake, I was asleep. So again, this feeling went on and on and on. And then I started to move faster and started to kind of start to feel like I was flying, and it was really, really fast. And I suddenly got really, really scared. And I remember thinking, oh my God, is this a near-death experience? And am I going to die soon? And just with that thought as well, I went boom, 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 boom. And then as I got back into my bed, I still couldn't wake myself. And I remember trying to shout in my sleep and thought I was bashing my husband, then boyfriend. And then eventually, as I woke up out of it, I remember saying to him, why didn't you help me? I'd call for help. And he said, it was nothing, hadn't heard anything. So these instances for me started to become more frequent. So started in my late teens and started to get, had been once a month, and they were becoming once every 2 weeks. And then sometimes they wouldn't be the full sleep paralysis, but they would be these bizarre episodes, either falling asleep or waking up. Then in the bottom photograph, so I still, in having all these experiences, I went to lots of doctors during that time. I was told, they tested me for blood sugars, they tested me for all kinds of different things. So still continued to not really get an answer to this. And during the time, I had been doing dance classes. I've been trying to do everything to keep myself fit, keeping myself going, constantly pushing myself, but then constantly exhausted, no matter what I did. And then these nighttime episodes. And on the birth of my daughter, this is the birth of my daughter, Phoebe, and at her christening, that just kind of represents into that stage. Now I was into my 20s and my late 20s and early 30s. Everything again was being brought down to, as I would try to explain what I was feeling, I would fall asleep folding the clothes. When my kids were toddlers and I'd be putting them to bed and telling them the story, next thing I was fast asleep and they had to crawl down on top of me downstairs to my husband, and he'd bring them back up again. So it was just a constant state of falling asleep. And also things like cars. I would fall asleep nearly by the end of the driveway, fall asleep on a bus and miss my stop. Then get weaknesses at various points, and suddenly, even if I was standing at a bus stop or standing in different places, I would feel like I was going to fall, and I would just kind of try to catch myself to be able to sit down. So there was all these very bizarre symptoms. So next slide, please. It wasn't though I hadn't told doctors about it. As I say, I'd gone to various doctors, but a real breakthrough for me. So again, what does it look like for someone to fall asleep with narcolepsy? I added this photograph here. Is I had the local doctor that I went to, and a new doctor came in to cover for her while she was on holidays. And as I talked to this doctor, she looked up and she said, oh, there seems to be a lot of issues in here with exhaustion and tiredness and lack of sleep or interrupted sleep. And she said, you've been on a lot of antibiotics. You seem to have, some form of asthma, chronic bronchitis, catarrh, all these different things. She said, I think we should go to an ear, nose, and throat specialist or a chest specialist and try and figure out, is it more severe and does it need more care? So I went along and had again a whole series of other tests done. To be told by that doctor, he said, from what you told me you had, he said, I was expecting there could be something quite untoward here. He said, I thought you might even have lung cancer because the level of exhaustion and all the different things you're doing don't go along with what you have, which is, mild to moderate asthma and nothing else untoward. And he said to me, there's a friend of mine called Dr. Catherine Crowe, who is a doctor in Dublin, and I'd really like you to go to see her and let's have a look at the sleep thing and the tiredness thing. He said, I really want to have a look at that and see if there's something happening. So I went along to Dr. Crowe. In walking in, I was absolutely terrified because I felt kind of silly talking to her about some of these experiences I had, especially the bizarre kind of sleep sequences and what felt like these, the difficulties in falling asleep and on waking up. And I really hated talking about anything like that because it felt strange. And I also, there was nothing in my experience besides movies like My Private Idaho or Moulin Rouge with the Argentinian actor kind of collapsing. I didn't feel that I had some of those. I'd watched a documentary about narcolepsy, but they all had severe cataplexy. And again, to me, I felt kind of strange going in to talk to a sleep doctor. But as I talked to Dr. Crow, at the end of the conversation, she said to me, Orla, there's something going on here. And I do think there is an issue here in relation to your sleep. And she said, I want you to come in straight away, and I'd like to do some sleep tests on you. So one half of me was relieved that somebody was kind of taking it seriously and they were going to look at it. But I was also kind of nervous, just what the unexpected was. It was bizarre. So I went and did the sleep test, got covered in wires and everything else. And then I was told to ring Catherine Pro in 3 weeks' time or 2 weeks' time. But I left it about 3.5, 4, because again, I'd gone back in my own head saying, here we go again. Like other times, I'd be told there's nothing there. But when I rang Dr. Crow, she said to me, there's definitely something there, Orla. It's either narcolepsy or it's idiopathic hypersomnolence. And she said to me, I'm sending you out a prescription and I want you to take it straight away. The big thing for me was in getting the prescription again, I still kind of thought, what's this all about? And still was wondering, why was it such a big deal? Because I'm on the inside, I'm not seeing some of what everyone was seeing on the outside, or realizing that a lot of what I was experiencing wasn't the norm. But to give an example of what it felt like is suddenly I took the medication for narcolepsy. And in taking my medication, the example I would give is it was like I went from having dim candlelight, in a room to suddenly being in a room with 100-watt, 200-watt, 300-watt bulbs. It was absolutely startling. And I remember kind of talking to everyone really animated, and to my husband and to my colleagues saying, oh, so this is what it's like to feel wide awake. It was just an amazing experience. So then talking to Dr. Crow, when I rang her kind of 2 weeks later and explained how I felt, she said, and I said, well, I'm sure I just have mild narcolepsy. And she said, no, Orly, your symptoms really are more towards moderate because of the nighttime and some of the other experiences. So that was a real kind of eye opener for me. So next slide, please, Julie. So let's take a look at what narcolepsy is. So narcolepsy is a chronic neurological condition that impairs the brain's ability to regulate the sleep-wake cycle. It affects 1 in 2,000 people. That's 200,000 Americans and 3 million people worldwide. And Lauren and I did a calculation earlier, and we were saying that's about 25,000 people in Ireland. So next slide, please. So what are the symptoms? So the symptoms can vary by person, and they may include excessive daytime sleepiness, periods of extreme sleepiness during the day that are comparable to someone without narcolepsy having been kept awake for 48 to 72 hours. And this was definitely something, the excessive daytime sleepiness was a huge thing for me. Just no matter how much sleep I had, I never felt that I was refreshed. I would just get sleepy out of nowhere. Cataplexy. So cataplexy is a striking, sudden episode of muscle weakness, usually triggered by strong emotions such as laughter, exhilaration, surprise, or anger. And the severity may vary from a slackening in the jaw, a buckling of the knees, to falling down. The duration may be for a few seconds to several minutes, and the person remains fully conscious, even if unable to speak during this episode. Then if we look at the hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations, this is visual, auditory, or tactile hallucinations upon falling asleep or waking up. These can be very frightening and very confusing. And as I mentioned, all those experiences that I was having from the time of my kind of mid to late teens and right up into the time I was diagnosed, frightening 100% and very, very confusing, and just waking up not quite sure of what had happened and what hadn't happened. Sleep paralysis, so the inability to move for a few seconds or minutes upon falling asleep or waking up. It's often accompanied by the hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations. And it's important to know that people without narcolepsy can experience these hallucinations and the sleep paralysis. And in fact, about 1/3 of all people experience these at some point in their lives, usually during periods of high stress and poor sleep. For people with narcolepsy, these are much more frequent and consistent over time. So as I mentioned, the hallucinations aspect of it would happen to me on a very regular basis, at least a few times a week. But with the having sleep paralysis with the hallucinations, that was less frequent. That would have been more at periods of extreme kind of stress for me, maybe kind of once a month, once every 2 months. Then disrupted nighttime sleep. Unlike public perception, people with narcolepsy do not sleep all the time. The timing of the sleepiness is off. With narcolepsy, someone may fight the sleepiness during the day, but then struggle to sleep at night. So again, as I mentioned, this is something for me. I had the sleepiness during the day, but then sometimes I might fall asleep immediately and then wake up in the middle of the night and be awake for a few hours, and this in and out experience. There's 2 types. So there's narcolepsy with cataplexy, and there's narcolepsy without cataplexy. I've been diagnosed with the narcolepsy too, without cataplexy, but I have some other underlying conditions. I've got hypermobility, and I suffer from low blood pressure. But I have had experience of muscle weakness. But when it's come to doing any of the actual sleep tests, it hasn't actually shown up within the sleep tests. So, but I have had some experience, not the typical cataplexy experiences. So next slide, please. Diagnosis. It typically includes a 24-hour sleep study. That includes a nighttime portion, which is called polysomnography, and a daytime nap portion, which is called multiple sleep latency test, to record one's brain waves. The diagnosis is mainly based on how quickly and frequently one goes into rapid eye movement, so the REM dream sleep during these tests. So to give an example of that, when I had my sleep test done, there was one time in having my sleep test, I thought I had one of the best night's sleep. And I thought, this is brilliant. You know, I don't have my kids in the room, don't have my husband in the room. I've had a fantastic night's sleep. And when the sleep technician came in the next morning, she said, oh, that was a bad night's sleep, Orla. And I said, oh, that was a very good night's sleep. And she said to me, well, you were awake about 100 times during the night. So again, the sleep tests will show up some of these things for you. So next slide, please. So when we look at treatments, so what are the treatments? There's currently no cure for narcolepsy, and treatments for symptoms vary widely by the person, but they may also include nighttime and histamine-directed medication to decrease the excessive daytime sleepiness in cataplexy. I've been on this type of medication for the last few years, and I've noticed things like an improvement in driving. So again, the medications are working on different aspects. There's wake promoting or stimulant medications to increase alertness. I've also been on this type of medication since my first diagnosis at 36. Antidepressant medication to decrease cataplexy. I'm also on this medication, and I found that really helped with the sleep paralysis and some of the hallucination aspects. So it really helped with that. And also I remember saying to Dr. Crow that when I went on the antidepressant, it felt like I was able to walk more upright. Sounds kind of bizarre, but I had that feeling of feeling a little less floppy and a little bit more in control. And then schedule daytime naps, which again are extremely important. When we look at the coping strategies, things like daytime naps. So for me, it was about talking to my employer and starting to say, would it be possible for me to do flex work? So sometimes there's supports that are needed within kind of work environments that are going to help you get the sleep hygiene you need, get those rests that you need. I've tried lots of different types of diets and find exercise extremely useful. I've been involved with the Narcolepsy Ireland group in attending some of their meetups and found that to be extremely valuable. Especially the first time I ever went to one of the meetups was literally the first time I'd ever met anybody else with narcolepsy. So it was mind-blowing just to be able to share experiences and for once not feel weird or wonderful. So the coping strategies, having that social support. I have the Project Sleep email comes to me in my work address and comes to me at my home address. So I regularly will look up what's coming up, what's the research, what's happening, and social media as well, just being able to share stories with people. So important to look at all aspects. I found, as I say, just the more information I could get through some of those support mechanisms, it helped me feel a little bit more in control and a little bit more confident about what I was doing as well. Was I doing the right things? So next slide, please, Julie. So here, living with narcolepsy, I've just added a few photographs from here. When I left school and went to college at 18, I had to leave college. I did a year in college because at that stage, I literally could barely stay awake during the lectures. Now, at the time, I was studying engineering, which it wasn't really a match for me either. So it was a mixture of topic that wasn't really good and also having these episodes of sleepiness. I found it almost impossible to stay awake during lectures. A real thrill for me then, and I talk about some of my earth angels that are in this photograph as well. So on the top left-hand corner, there's my mom, Helen, and my dad also was one of my earth angels, and that's my poor daughter, who was not very impressed with the day. That's Isabel, not being impressed with the day. But it was one of the most exciting things for me, from not being able to achieve going to college and all the norms that all my friends were doing, and feeling that I had really, let myself down or hadn't lived to where I should have been, because I was a bright kid in school. I would have been kind of doing very well until I started to develop all the various kind of narcolepsy symptoms. So the thrill of being able to get my degree was amazing. And that gave me the confidence as well. I actually then went and I did through distance education. So both of my main qualifications have been through distance education. So that means I can choose how I did my study, which is perfect for somebody, again, in having narcolepsy, so with a sleep condition. So proud moments. The main picture is a picture of me with my fabulous daughters. So Phoebe the bride and Isabel the bridesmaid, my two daughters, my new son, Ross, my son-in-law, and my fantastic earth angel husband, David. So a real sense of pride in this photograph. And why I have it here too, I want to mention one of my other earth angels. So this is my sister-in-law, Joan. And Joan is one of those people, when I talked about as a child, I always had my go-to people, being the fifth of six, and ask for support. My sister-in-law, Joan, has been amazing. I invited her to the getting ready for the wedding because one of her daughters was actually a bridesmaid to Phoebe. And Joan is so attuned to me. She walked in and I was already dead on my feet. And my biggest fear of the wedding was, there's no way I'm going to make it through the day. This is going to be horrific. I don't want to have to go off and kind of not be able to talk to people and go and have a nap and all the usual things, where social events could be really, really difficult for me, and too much excitement, too much going on. So Joan took a look at me and said, oh my God, you're not doing well, are you? So she dragged me, brought me upstairs, gave me a lovely cup of herbal tea, and made me have a good hour's sleep. And there you can see how happy I am in the photograph. So just that kindness and the kindness that I've had from the people around me that have helped me be able to get through what I need to do. My girls, as I say, so if we look at on the top right-hand corner, so this is as my girls were small, they've gone through so many things. They've had their mother fall asleep on the couch every night. They've had all the different things of me not being able to do various things, always having to adapt our lives around everything that we have. And they have been so unbelievable during that point. My daughter Isabel here is the little girl beside my husband. One situation that I remember of kind of that frightening thing for a small child, when Isabel was about 10, I went to the cinema. The four of us went to the cinema. And I started to feel what I felt was, now normally I would make a great film critic because my family used to joke, one nod, it's a bad film, two nods, it's dreadful. And if she's completely asleep, then it's not even worth talking about. So the cinema was always hard for me. So I thought I need to get out of here because I'm just sleeping all the time. So I got up to go and try and get a cold drink to put at the back of my neck, which is one of the things I would try normally to help. And I suddenly could feel myself slipping, and I was beside stairs, and I tried holding onto the bar, and that wasn't even enough, and I could feel myself slip right down onto the steps. I was lying on a hard stairs with my poor daughter there trying to talk to me. I could hear her, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't do anything. And what really shocked me when I think of it now, nobody came to her help. Nobody came anywhere, but she had the wherewithal to go and ask for some cold water, to get some cold water to put on my face, to try and help revive me. And as I say, within a few minutes, I was fine again. So again, it's these people around me that have been absolutely intrinsic to helping me. The picture on the lower left-hand side is Lola. As I call her, she is my little special dog. She seems to read me like nothing else. And Lola, if I'm having a bad time, Orby seems to know what to do. So she's there, she's nodding me, she's prodding me, she's doing whatever. If she sees me starting to get dopey, I really think she probably senses some of how I'm feeling. And then I put the picture on the lower right-hand side is actually a drawing, which I want to kind of talk about as well, is how creativity. So during all this process and trying to figure out what my life was with narcolepsy and everything that I did, I discovered my absolute love of creativity again. I have been the small child who drew all the time, who was always doing something. But in taking up art again, I found a great way to keep myself going. So next slide, please, Julie. So the things that have kept me going, that creativity, Julie talked about being the crochet master. I don't know if I'm quite a crochet master, but I do it all the time. And even today I talked to my husband and I said to him, what is your kind of reading again of the crafts and what it's done? And as he said to me, remember, Orla, you used to fall asleep on the couch every single night and we'd have to wake you to get to go to bed. You couldn't last through a program. You couldn't last through anything. And he said he was absolutely shocked that I took up a crochet hook and a ball of wool. And he said the first night, he said, you watched the television. It was 11 o'clock and I was still awake. And he went, that's a bit unusual. The second night I sat down, tried another granny square, and I was awake till 1 o'clock. And he went, now this really is strange. And as he said, he's seen how me doing things with my hands, and this is one of the things that I've noticed in, I've used things like the ADHD website, the Attitude magazine, because both my daughters have ADHD, and I also have some ADHD, and my husband most definitely has. But in using the techniques to help in our family of things like doing things with your hands, drawing, colors, sensory things, it really helped kind of pull me out of that feeling. So when I'm feeling really tired, I'll do my naps to get my restoration, but I use my hands as much as I can do. So I paint, I draw, I write, I take photographs. The photograph in the center is a self photograph. I go on long walks with my husband. He's an artist, and we'll take loads of photographs that we'll then use as reference for drawing, or I'll use it for embroidery or crochet or for something. So using that side of me, when I look to the future, it is discovering what I'm good at, not always focusing on the things that I wasn't so good at. I don't have the energy that other people may have. There's so many hobbies. I tried dance, I tried all these different things, but it really just was too much. But through the arts, I've opened up a whole new world for myself. And it's given me the confidence as well. The other thing that I found that worked really well was talking. So I ended up within my job, instead of being just screen based, I got myself through doing my psychology and going back and doing those studies into adult education and into being part of a HR team and training team. And now I'm a talent consultant. So working with people, doing workshops, all those things really help me stay awake and get the best of what I can do. And to pay back, so I'm so conscious of all the help that I've had over the years. I try to give back and work as much as I can do. So I'm involved in the disability associations, the networks for Pride, the networks for parents and people with children, and as many networks that I can be involved in to help give back to others. And what I've noticed over the years is sometimes I think, oh, here we go again. So I'm talking about the same topic. And then I'll just get an email from someone to say, your words resonated. Thank you so much. You have no idea what it meant. To hear you talk about your experiences makes me feel okay. And it's also helped some people along the way get diagnosis for different things from my involvement with the disability awareness groups. So again, the important thing for me is through charity work, be it my crochet of hats, I've knit hundreds of hats and blankets for local charities, for the Children's Hospital, for different associations. I get involved in the Narcolepsy Ireland to be able to help with some of their Zoom conferences. Zoom, again, if we take the virtual world like we're doing now, that has been a game changer for me as well. So the ability to be able to do what I do, but do it at home. So I can take my naps and do what I need to do. And even where Zoom, what I do for work and my artistic work, I actually have a Stitch and Bitch club every Monday night that I have with friends and family. So again, it's trying to use what is positive. So the future for me is about getting out there, to tell my story, to use the talents I have, and just to get enjoyment out of what I can do with the people that mean so much to me. So next slide, please. So raising awareness, because of low awareness, even amongst physicians, and the misperceptions, there's an average of 8 to 15 years between narcolepsy symptoms onset and diagnosis. It's estimated the majority of people with narcolepsy are currently undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. Some common misdiagnosis includes epilepsy, depression, schizophrenia. And as I say, I was at that upper end of time from the time I had my first symptoms to getting diagnosed. So that progressively, developing the narcolepsy and all the various experiences I've had, despite going to doctors, it took till age 36 before I was diagnosed. So my mission is to try and raise awareness to others so they don't have to struggle with it. I talk about the positives of having my narcolepsy and discovering the artistic piece, but I know there were so many kind of more difficult things along the way. I know at times it was really difficult for my kids, really difficult for my husband, especially before I had my diagnosis and went on my medication. So my aim is to say, let's get the word out there. Let's try and raise awareness so people can get the support they need it when they need it to be able to have that best experience. So next slide, please, Julie. So raising awareness. It's estimated that 1 in 5 people are living with a sleep disorder. There's a wide variety of sleep disorders, and symptoms can be hard to detect. If you have any questions about your own sleep, personalized support and resources are available through Project Sleep's helpline. There's a free national helpline for people facing sleep issues and sleep disorders. And as I mentioned as well, you'll find in most countries, for me, it was Narcolepsy Ireland. There are, in so many countries across the world now, there are organizations that have been set up with people part of the organization who have the same experiences as you. So as I say, it's so important to seek the help that you can. And you can see there's the helpline there. And next slide, please. I'm sharing my story today as part of Raising Voices. It's a program of non-profit organization, Project Sleep, which empowers patient advocates to share their stories, improve public understanding of sleep disorders. And as I say, thank you very much for listening to my story. And I know for me, even the experience of coming along to the Raising Voices course, again, the same thing, listening to other stories during the sessions, learning from other people has been another layer of that self-discovery and a path forward. So really appreciate everything that Julie and Lauren and the team of Project Sleep do. So thank you.
Thank you, Orla. Yay. Great job. There's just so much appreciation for you on YouTube. Everyone, so much of what you're saying is resonating with people, and especially your love for the arts and finding creativity. I think we all want to join the Stitch and Bitch Club. That sounds amazing. So please, folks, send over any questions. I know we did have one question from Anne, and she was asking about support groups, which I think you've mentioned. But just tell us a little bit more about the situation in Ireland and how you got looped in with Narcolepsy Ireland and some of the social, and how did you even, is it conferences or like meetups, or how did you meet people?
Yeah, I was through Dr. Crow, through my doctor. She had actually suggested that I should go along to a session because she said, Orly, you've never actually met anybody with narcolepsy. And in going along to the session, I remember walking along the street before I went in saying, I'm a ham. I don't have narcolepsy. Why am I going along to this? Because again, it was that weird feeling all the time about telling your story, especially with the hidden disability. And I didn't have to kind of reassure myself too much because I tripped and fell over just as I walked in the door. I did a knee buckle thing and was feeling completely spaced out. By the time I walked in the room, really wanted to run. But the minute I sat down, the first person I talked to was an amazing person. And from there on in, I just couldn't stop talking to everybody who was there. It was like Christmas, just being able to go around the excitement of getting a present, being able to talk to other people and not feel weird. To feel the same was mind-blowing. So for me, being involved in Narcolepsy Ireland and going along to we had suddenly sleepy sessions on Saturdays annually. I tried to get to as many of those as I could. And then, as I say, even the Zoom sessions, or as I say, whatever which way, I try and look, I'm not great at posting things in Facebook or any of those type of things. I struggle with that a bit more, but talking is easier for me. So I found the meetups were extremely useful.
Yeah.
And mind-blowing. Nice to meet people with the same thing.
That's awesome. We love Dr. Crow. I wish Dr. Crow was all of our doctors. I think just even her recognizing so quickly that would be helpful for you is just A+. So yeah. So, when I was reading your bio and saying that you were an organizational psychologist, I was thinking, I don't even know if I know what that really means. What does that mean?
With organizational psychology, it can be anything from I get involved in succession planning, in group work, in teamwork, in high performing teams, or designing programs for learning and development for people. So it's anything from soft skills to technical skills to business skills. So it's really all about people. And I think because, again, being interested in other people also helped me understand myself a little bit more. So I've just found an amazing way to get excited about life. So again, anything I can do to help others is of benefit. So it's been an amazing career. And I had gone on a voyage of discovery when I started to kind of wonder what all these different conditions were. So going to kind of psychology sites because I was trying to look up what is sleep paralysis, what is this, before I ever got diagnosed. And that gave me an interest in psychology. But I wanted to focus on the work environment. I did actually work with people with disability for a few years in Ireland. And I found that an amazing experience, a very humbling experience. But then I remember thinking, well, all the people I know over the years in work who are also dealing with all kinds of hidden disabilities and difficulties or difficulties in their families, I kind of felt there's such a need to help within work environments as well, to be there for people, because it's all everything about work is people orientated. So whatever you can do.
I love that. And what about working in HR sort of? Through that, do you end up working with people with disabilities or?
Yeah, so sometimes what will happen is that people who maybe have just had a new diagnosis. So I've offered myself these two things. I'm on a group that's there to offer support. So if people come forward and there's anything going on for them, or they're suddenly getting a diagnosis of something and maybe returning to work after illness, I had kind of offered that support so that people would come to me to look for some kind of mentoring and coaching to help them at various intervals. So a lot of my work has been in around kind of the training and development in that area, but I've always tried to make sure that I also keep a hand in on the other kind of aspects as well of being sport.
That's so important. I always remember before I was, full-time for Project Sleep, I worked at a big cancer research center, and trying to get accommodations always made me, even though I was out there sharing my story and speaking and all these confident things, dealing with getting accommodations at work made me feel so naked and vulnerable, kind of at the hands of someone that didn't understand my condition. So it was a really tough part of the process. And so that kind of like,
Really?
being there for people during those times, I think is really incredible. How did you end up finding Project Sleep and getting involved here?
Was actually through the Narcolepsy Ireland. So it was one of the sessions that we did that I heard about Project Sleep. And when I went and I had a look at it, I was just absolutely mesmerized at the depth and the broadness of it. And I loved all the graphics for the Narcolepsy Day every year as well. I just loved everything about it. I thought it was such a positive base and the sponsoring of people. And it just seemed to be kind of offering hope rather than here's the things you can't do. So that's for me as well, because I've always tried to veer on that piece as well, saying let's investigate, let's try and see what we can do, let's kind of look outside of things. So I found it fascinating. And then, as I say, I have it on my personal and my work emails. So I look forward to seeing the emails come in. So I'd love to see it.
Love to hear that.
Watched all the videos and watched all the information that's there.
Let's see if there's any other questions for you specifically. I have one more question, but let's see if there's any else from the audience. Just so much love from people saying thank you and how powerful this was. And so there's no specific questions. My last question is, do you have any favorite creative project, whether it's crocheting or one of your paintings? Is anything in particular like your most proud project?
The blanket that I have on the slides as well. So that was again kind of early days of starting out, and it's for me as well choosing the brightest of colors, because I wouldn't normally kind of choose that. And I've noticed over the years, because at times I used to feel things were quite, because you're going through all the nighttime stuff and the bizarre things, kind of a tendency to say, I don't want things to be in black and white. I want things to be really, really colorful. So I had such fun making that. So for me, it's about trying to instill a bit of love. Like I've learned how to do fancy stitches and I've done some really kind of nice things over the years, but I love stuff that kind of has a story to it. So I've made, crocheted lots of toys for people as well and do lots of stuff. So just trying to find how can I bring a little bit of meaning to somebody and just kind of do surprise things for people as well. I love being able to do that too. Someone's been really kind and then I'll just kind of say, here's a blanket I made for you, or here's something I've made for your kids, or something. So it's a great way to be able to give back. So that's a big thing.
And so unique. I love the focus on color. I think that's so important. So yeah, are there any creative projects or goals that you have creatively for the future?
I do a lot of writing as well. So I started writing a novel. So, and my character in it, of course, is narcolepsy. So
that's awesome.
I have a few kind of pet projects like that I do. And when my kids were small, I did a whole load of children's stories. So it was kind of the bedtime stories. So I've created artwork to go along with those as well.
That sounds awesome. All right. Well, we just can't wait. I think there was also one thing we want to mention is that Ireland is having an event on World Narcolepsy Day, right?
Yeah. So if you go on to the Narcolepsy Ireland Facebook site, there is notification as well. So we're doing kind of a meetup on World Narcolepsy Day. So it'll be a Zoom meeting. And the aim of what we want to do in this as well is just talk about, again, what can we do? So the positives. And that's what I loved about the Rising Voices piece as well, the future, what can we do? And just sharing experiences, but also sharing, the tips, tools, guides, like the cold can of Coke at the back of the neck, or take your shoes off and feel the ground, all the different, from the small to the big things that just make people's lives better.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. And of course, thanks to Narcolepsy Ireland. They've been a huge partner on World Narcolepsy Day since the very beginning. And that just has meant so much to be able to, have this day that we really celebrate all month, but to focus on this condition and this community. So thank you again, Orla, for sharing your story today. Sending lots of spoons and wakefulness your way. I know this takes a lot of energy to do these broadcasts, and thank you everyone for tuning in. You guys are awesome, and we can't wait to share more stories with you in the future. So please stay tuned, and thanks for being our first YouTube broadcast here today. With that, I think we'll go ahead and say have a good evening there in Ireland, and have a good day to you guys in the US. And we'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.